everybody. I'm Dr. Stuart Cantor. I have 30 years of experience in the food, nutraceutical, and pharmaceutical industries, and I've developed all kinds of products for companies and work with about 10 CMOs, or contract manufacturing organizations, at different scales. So from R&D scale through scale up, and there's always quality issues when you go from small scale and you're trying to increase your vat size or your production times 10. So usually issues in the formulation or the manufacturing, the process will probably need to be adjusted to some degree.
Hi, my name is George Ho, and I own Ingenuity. I'm out of Knoxville, Tennessee. We're a co-packer, and we have both NSF and also SGS certification. We do various nutritional products primarily, and I got into CBD co-packing after the hemp bill passed. And also, I'm the founder of Myco Sativa. It's a premium nutritional lifestyle brand, and we're fusing both cannabinoids and medicinal mushrooms.
Good afternoon. My name is David Turetsky. I am the Director of Account Management at Shy Farms in Colorado. We are a hemp farm and partnered with a very large lab out in the Colorado area. So I oversee all logistics, account management, and some of the farm operations as well.
All right, so let's start at your end, David. Since you run a grow facility, is that right? Is it an outdoor farm?
It's outdoor and 8 greenhouses.
Okay, so I think maybe it's probably important to start at the quality of the product and what to consider.
Yes, that is very, very important. So in the sense of when it comes to white labeling, a real important question when speaking to a white labeler is ask them where they're getting their CBD from. You can vet them and you can look at their facility and all that, but at the end of the day, if you're promoting a CBD product, it's the ingredient that's the most important part. So being able to have ties to that farm, also, in turn, it adds a marketing stance for you. If you were to get, let's say, our farm or something like that, you can contact that farm. Most farms should be transparent, and transparency is key. We are very transparent, and we're open arms with people. So, for example, you have a product. Hey, can I take pictures with my product? I use your ingredient at your farm with your plants. Show a farm to table type of feel. That helps the farm. It helps the final. That helps the company who's making the product, and also helps the consumer because they know exactly where it's coming from. It's trackable, traceable from seed to sale.
All right, so is there an importance on the test, the lab results, some like batch versus some?
Well, yeah, so the lab and the farm should go hand in hand and be able to work together very well. So yes, the test results obviously are important. You want to, ask for the COAs and see all those things, but also be sure to test it. Don't just look at a piece of paper and say it's good. It's just kind of like if you're purchasing a car and you say, hey, I want to buy your car. If I hand you a piece of paper and say, it's good, are you going to be like, okay, not test drive it? No. You're going to test drive the car. You're going to see it, make sure it doesn't have a weird stench or something going on. Otherwise, it's the same thing,
So I think I've noticed when I was asking about is you can get a batch test and you can get, I've seen lab reports for previous batches, but on your label, you're saying a certain thing, and the batch you're putting in it now isn't really living up to the label, and that's a dangerous position if you're on the other.
100% very dangerous position, and it's dangerous for the industry as well. It takes one bad apple to ruin, so we all as a community in the CBD industry have to stick together, work together, be transparent together, communicate, don't be hiding things. Obviously IP, but certain, to an extent, just be open with one each other and help each other, recommend each other. If you have good relations and good business with a certain company, say, hey, I did this with this white labeling for a balm, and maybe there's a tincture company that does something different. And if you're, into tinctures, then I'll say, go here or go here. Just help each other, communicate, and be open.
Okay, go ahead. Can you continue on that?
Yeah, absolutely. So a couple of comments would be, of course, you're getting the COA of the product, and then you got to test it yourself, right? And make sure you try to get a lab that's got ISO 17025. And then also when you're looking at, if you want to, you look at the scale of how much you want to do research-wise. When I got started, I actually went to some agricultural conferences in Tennessee and also Kentucky. So if you go to those conferences, it's definitely not more like a B2B or a B2C conference. Then you're able to talk to a lot of farmers and figure out who's got good plants, and you can talk to a lot of professors to figure out, where the good genetics are and the good extraction farms are. So those are the things you can do research on. In addition, if you're looking for a white labeler, on the last panel, what I was saying is that, one of the questions from a person over there was that, hey, there's a lot of contract manufacturers out there. How do you tell if they have certification? Well, a couple things is that, everybody's supposed to be FDA registered, so there's nothing, okay? And you're supposed to be following CGMP because that's the law, right? And if you're looking for the next thing for verification, you're looking for NSF, SQF, SGS, and these third-party organizations that do auditing of the plant and the facility. And very quickly, you can ask them what kind of certifications they have. So if they say, hey, I have NSF, you really don't have to wait that long. You can go into the nsf.org, or you can go to SGS, and you can go check their name out to see if they're compliant, and if their certification is still valid. So there's another area to take a look at. And as he said, not one co-packer can do everything. So if you meet somebody and they make everything CBD-wise, then you know that it's not working out. Okay, that's not working out. Just because what you find in this industry for the co-packing side is that we specialize in some things and we scale those things out. Not everybody can do everything. That just doesn't work, and it doesn't work for your doctor, right? You got anesthesiologists, different type of specialties. It doesn't work in contract manufacturing either. So those are some red flags you can take a look at.
And also, my last job was principal scientist of a skincare CMO. They were not into CBD, but it was a great experience. We had customers all over the world. We were doing all kinds of personal care products in different packaging configurations. And they had FDA inspection in 2014, so they thought everything's wonderful. But they also had a line of animal products, anti-flea and tick for dog and cat. And they were making those products in the same tank as for human. And when FDA came back in 2017, they saw the logbooks that was being done, and then all this controversy started because they needed to pull lots from before to have them tested for the pesticide residues, because the pesticide was EPA regulated, not FDA. And all that happened, and they eventually got a warning letter which scared all their customers, and then they went bankrupt in North Carolina and in Florida. So yeah, that was definitely a lesson on quality, and that quality does matter. And I wouldn't have expected that for a medium-sized company that had over 500 employees, but you never know. It all depends. Everyone needs to save money, but you still have to consider that you are in a regulated industry, and their FDA is going to come at some time, or they're going to look at your website and see what you're claiming in your literature. And if things are not what they're supposed to be, they're going to be contacting you. And that's true. I've worked with about 10 contract manufacturers across food, nutraceuticals, and pharma, large and small. Some, like Patheon in pharma, the biggest location in the world, does everything. They even do clinical packaging. But they have the scale and the employees to support all of that. But generally, some smaller contract manufacturers, they do have a niche, they do have a specialty, and they will have a certain scale and capacity that they can manufacture your products to. And then there's agreements that you will sign, and then the scheduling comes because it depends upon what volume you're going to be doing with them versus another client. So especially as a contract manufacturer, they have multiple priorities, and they may have dozens of clients with different products, and it depends upon what your volume is with them, where they're going to prioritize you for their scheduling of the manufacturing.
That's good advice. So if we turn this into, I think what might be a helpful exercise is to sort of think of this as your board of advisors, and you're going to come to them with your business and say, I want to start a white labeling CBD company. What's the first thing I should do? Should we start with a list of vetted sources to find your products, or where would you start?
That's a great question. Where would I start? I would first decide what type of product I want to make. Like I said before, and everyone else here on the panel, not everyone can make everything. So if you want to make gummies, stay to gummies. You want to make tinctures, creams, things like that. Then you can reach out to some companies who would be, I guess, potentially your competitors. And at conferences like this is a great opportunity. You can just say, hey, where do you get your stuff done? And they might give a recommendation. And you just work down the line. And by working down the line, you'll get to at least see if it gets to a farm, or if they're getting their ingredients from a broker or whatever. You know, there's different routes you might want to take and see. So kind of work backwards. Just start with the final product. I have tincture here, and then work down the line and work backwards. That's kind of how I would, if I were starting my own brand.
Yeah, usually the CMOs have regulatory people available to give you advice. They have labeling people. You'll have to, give them your logo and your ingredient statement and all the things you want on your packaging, and they will do the work with you to get the artwork ready for the labels. And there'll be a MOQ, or minimum order quantity, for certain types of packaging configurations that they will tell you. And if you're in the initial stages, you try to have a good idea about what your product is, what your target market is, what your packaging is going to be, so you can tell them, because there's so many different types of packaging they need to know, and talk to them on the phone and ask them to give you a general idea. And they may need to see an ingredient deck for them to give you a price quote on the price per unit or the total cost. They may do the costing different ways. So cost per unit, or cost per the batch. They'll tell you the batch size, and that may come after a while. But you want to talk to them on the phone, and you also want to visit them in person. You want to take a tour of their facility. You want to look at their documentation. What certifications do they have, and see the equipment and see what capacity they can go to.
Yeah, it really starts from what kind of product you want to make, and then also what kind of store you have. There's so many products already out, so if you're doing something new, if you got a new product that's the same product as everybody else, then that's a challenge, all right? And you got to make sure that make sure you don't make too many claims. If you go to a bigger company, then we're going to vet the label, because we don't want to be liable for what you're trying to market out. So then what's the biggest difference? I think the biggest differentiator is what type of story, what it's going to resonate and be passionate with you. And you lead from the story, and then you kind of work backwards. In my opinion, more and more now is as you're starting out a CBD product, you have to have some differentiating factor, a different delivery system, different story, combination with the other herbals. Otherwise, it's just very, very hard for you to break through the noise.
Me too. It's a Me Too product.
I also wanted to add, do the homework and be proactive in the sense of have QR codes. Do all the extra stuff that isn't necessarily needed now. It's going to be needed. So before you have to take off your label, relabel, it's going to be much more of a headache, I promise you, especially if you're sitting on a bunch of units and boxes in a warehouse. So be proactive. Be proactive, I guess. Yeah, sorry.
And the other thing with CMOs is that, generally they will have a stock of plenty of ingredients. So you can choose to use their stock. They'll discuss with you how they're going to bill you. Certain ingredients, like if you only want to use your CBD to reserve for you, you'll tell them, I'm going to ship you my CBD. Either in personal care products can have like 30 to 40 ingredients. So they may have most of your ingredients, maybe they don't have some. So they'll keep a stock for you of what you ship to them exclusively for you. And then they'll bill you based on the other ingredients in your formula.
And that brings up a great point I was going to actually mention later. Ask them. Ask the white labeler. Say, if I bring my own ingredient, what's the manufacturing cost going to be? You're going to cut out a lot of overhead price just by going direct to a lab, a farm, and getting your ingredients and say, hey, what is my, how many units per SKU, et cetera. What is the manufacturing cost? I'll provide the CBD. Don't worry about it. Because all that happens, and if you think about it, in the middle is just I'm going to send the CBD to the white labeler that they buy, and they're going to put extra on top of the cost that they buy. So cut it all out. Just go direct.
Also, if you've been doing a lot of research and you haven't taken action, definitely go back and, if it's been a couple of months for sure, all right, for the last quote, go back and ask for an updated quote possibly, because prices for CBD has been dropping. It's been dropping, which is really good for the consumer and also good for the startup.
This is good. So we have to choose a product. This is your board of advisors saying choose your product. So we can think of maybe maybe we should take a popular vote here. So for, let's say, a pet product. How many are interested in a pet product? Okay, there's quite a few. Okay, and then on human product, how many are interested in more of a human product? Okay, there's more on that side, but there's plenty in the pet. And then who's interested in a tincture versus the other? Okay, what about edibles? Okay, topicals? Okay, there's a lot on the topicals. And let's maybe say, and then, okay, so then you also mentioned ingredients. So if you want to bring your own ingredient, does anybody have that in mind? Who has that in mind? Bringing your own ingredient. Let's say melatonin plus CBD for a sleep cream or something like that. Is anybody interested in, who's interested in that kind of a thing? A couple? Okay, so that's not a very popular one. So who's interested in just keeping it like full spectrum, high quality CBD and that's all? Okay. There's a lot of that out there. If we're going to go in that direction, maybe we should let's consider whether or not it's a good idea or where the niche might be that you want to pick and how to choose that niche and how would you do it if it was your brand that you're starting for yourself and you're going to go, maybe you have a little bit of a pet. Let's not keep that in the conversation and a little bit. You're also on the human side, but you want to launch your product and stay pretty lean. You don't want to be scattered. Right, so how would you start your brand at that point, at that general consensus?
Also, with all the ingredients, especially for personal care products, you can ask them for the specs and C of A so you can compare them to what you're thinking about using and see if the quality of those ingredients matches what you want to put in your product. And so you can determine, am I going to source some of these myself, or am I going to have, is it okay when I check the C of A's, the company can use that? Because I know we got into an issue with, at my last company, again, making a gel that was using alcohol. So alcohol can pull stuff out of the equipment and the plastic tubing from the lines. Again, this is pharma, so all the impurity profile and everything. So the company told us that I was working with told us that we can only use excipients from BASF. They've already tested the impurity profiles, and that's what they want. So I was only able to source from the excipients from that company. So sometimes, because there are nuances about what's reported on the C of A, or sometimes certain impurities are not on the C of A. When the company tests the product themselves, they'll find certain things that the supplier does not report. So that's also something to consider. There are always, there can be trace chemicals, peroxides and other things in certain excipients that may not be reported on the C of A, but when you test it, you can detect them.
So when you get the lab report, you should do your own lab report to verify that you got the correct information. Okay.
Yeah.
What's the cost that they should budget for that?
Well, analytical stuff can get kind of pricey because you have to do, for each ingredient you want to test, you have to do method validation. You have to be able to have a standard and put it through the equipment HPLC or perhaps GC to have a standard to compare about what the level is and what the retention time is. So that can be, I know if a company was going to bill you for that method validation, it could run depending on the number of ingredients, $20,000 at least.
So if you're going to do that on every batch you order, it's going to get a little too costly, right?
Well, of course, once they do the method validation for the active ingredients, you don't have to do that method validation. Again, you're just going to do the testing, but up front, the method validation can get kind of pricey because it does take time to adjust the method and by the standards and, you know, make sure that you do the LOQs, the limited quantitation, a limited detection. So it's pretty involved, and there's a USP monograph that talks about all the stuff you need for the method validation testing, so it's quite extensive.
Is there a third party that double checks it for you at a lower price?
Again, you have to shop around. There's multiple companies, Eurofins, Lancaster Labs. I mean, some of them do pharma only. Some of them do food and nutraceuticals and pharma. They have a food division, and you can get a price quote from them. They'll tell you what the cost is going to be in the time. So yeah, some companies are more pricey than others.
I know it was mentioned earlier, it may have even been, that was last panel, I am sorry, but someone mentioned last panel that sometimes C of A's float around and people try reusing them. So if you do request for a C of A, just also ask for, also ask for heavy metals testing, pesticides testing.
Mycotoxins.
Yeah, mycotoxins. These are tests that most good companies that you'd want to work with should be either have or will get for you. Some batches, you know, I don't remember the test off the top of my head that was requested. We didn't have it. And we said, yes, no problem. We went, took the sample, took it to the lab. A couple of days later, voila, there's the test. So it's a good way to weed out the nonsense, because if you ask for a pesticides test, a heavy metals test of a certain batch, and they only have the COA and they cannot or will not get it for you, more than likely, one, they don't even have the product, and they're just fishing for customers and folks who are trying to get into the industry, take advantage of you, and then they're gonna go out like a broker kind of would and just go find isolate, and just, once you said, okay, yeah, that batch is good, the COA is good, now it's like, okay, crap, now I have to go find isolate for this person. So it's kind of like a bait and switch type of thing.
Yeah, so when you're getting testing done, I mean, you can do a full panel, including the residual solvent testing.
Mm-hmm.
For most locations, you can probably like $500-600, all right? And it is correct, they should have that full panel, and you need to definitely double check it, because their extraction houses cutting corners using like really hardcore hydrocarbons.
And the other issue is it's also good to get the terpene profile, because I've worked with some distillates, and some of them taste pretty good. And there was one, a CEO sent me to develop a product. I told him I didn't think the distillate tasted that bad, but when I formulated the product with it, I said, I'm getting a burning and a barn smell, and I said, you need to give me they only gave me the C of A for the THC level and the CBD level and some of the other, a few cannabinoids, but no terpenes whatsoever. So I said, I told them what terpenes, you know, would be better to have in there as predominant versus others. Just talk to the suppliers to get me something that tastes better, because I said I can taste mask ingredients, but I can only go so far, and the burning and taste in the back of my throat and the barn smell was too much to overcome for what I was doing. So they'll be sending me hopefully a better extract distillate.
Another thing is that if you're going to buy the ingredient yourself, especially the cannabinoid, and what he was talking about, the distillate, you may want to test more than one batch. If you're thinking about really big, growing really big, then you need to do that, just because, you know, I'm Chinese. I grew up in a family that had a Chinese restaurant. Our fried rice tastes the same every single time you came in, okay? Our sweet sour soup tastes the same. You don't want to buy somebody that the batches are changing. Genetics are changing a little bit, but you know, sometimes if they're a broker, if it radically changes, it's really hard for a contract manufacturer to make it, you know, taste the same every single time for you.
And also, you should do the testing on every lot till you get historical data, till you know really what you have and what the range is, because even a specification of something from 10 to 20%, I used to do tech service, and people would call up and say, you know, we bought your ingredient, it worked great, and now it's not working properly, what's going on? And sometimes some companies would say, I want a specific range of the spec tighter just for our company because we have a sensitive process and it has to be this way. So even within a 10 to 20% spec of something, even moisture, sometimes the moisture might be on the low end, sometimes it might be in the middle, sometimes it might be on the high end. And you don't want any surprises when you go to manufacture, especially doing scale up. So you need to understand the historical data and the variability for something that's important to you, and know, and if necessary, talk to the supplier of that excipient or ingredient that it needs to be controlled only within this certain level.
Yeah, I was gonna kind of chime in on that. When you asked what ingredient you would want to use, that is an important thing to think about. When you're dealing with a full spectrum distillate, there's going to be more variance. It might be 77, 78% CBD on batch A, and then a batch B, C, D, etc. might be 81%, 80%, 79%. You get the idea. So there's going to be variance. So if you want your product to be consistent all the way through, unless obviously the white labeler knows what they're doing and you trust them, things like that, but isolate obviously because it's going to always be the same every time.
Okay, so how many people in the room are in the marketing and sales as your expertise? Okay. How many are business owners that are adding this as maybe a line of products in your business that's already current? Okay, all right. And so if we can consider there's someone on that side of it, how many are already totally aware of the science of what you're doing? Okay, almost nobody. Okay, so coming from a marketing and sales standpoint, they should probably have some sort of a unique niche or something that's unique to that product. So if you're starting with a white label, everybody else going to the same group of white labelers, and they all look exactly that they're going to make the same claims on the label. So what's a good differentiator, and how can you get it from that manufacturer, say, to maybe a third-party manufacturer who then combines ingredients who may not even know what ingredients you're also adding to it, so you can keep a proprietary blend?
Understood. Like what I said earlier, know where the CBD is coming from, find out who the farm is, and then contact that farm and ask them, and they should have no problem. I know we don't. I mean, just say, hey, could you mind if we use your farm, Shy Inside as an example, or whatever, and you promote the farm with, it's just, marketing together, and you can send me a product and I'll take a picture with it with the plants, and that can just differentiate you. Letting the consumer know where the CBD comes from is so important, especially with a lot of the bad apples that are out there. If the product doesn't work, well, if I'm putting my name on it, I promise you, it's my integrity, so.
Yeah, I think if you're, again, developing a new product, you really need to know who your end consumers are going to be. And most of the successful ones I see now is they're getting very, very targeted, okay, with a specific story or a specific segment or a specific delivery system. And as the prices go down on the CBD and other minor cannabinoids, eventually it's just going to be another ingredient, all right, as in, so many other ingredients in the nutrition industry. So that's why I think it's important that you come out with a story, in my opinion, because, if I'm starting another company, that is different from the market. And there are a lot of nutritional products that have like really, really popular tribes that haven't been combined with cannabinoids. You need to look into something like that you're passionate in, do the research on it. That's probably what I would pursue.
Anything to add to that, Stuart?
Yeah, I mean, if it would be good to have a QA person that would be responsible for doing the audits of the suppliers, audit of the farm, so you can see where your material is coming from, and it gives you assurance that they can tell you that we're going to give you consistent quality. You're not going to have to worry that something's going to change, and you're going to be surprised when you go to manufacture or when people say, your stuff is not working the way it used to be. What's different?
Okay, does anybody see a gap in the market? And maybe we can start with some popular case studies.
There's so many gaps. I mean, one thing I see, I mean, if you look at ginsengs, I've done a lot of stuff with ginseng. I think cannabinoids obviously is more popular in ginseng, but there are a lot of different type of ginseng molecules. So one of the things I see is coming on now for people trying to separate themselves from the pack is they're adding CBG inside the product. There's other minor cannabinoids, CBN for sleep, CBC, CBL. So those are all the things that are going to restart the cycle again. And if you can afford it and you find the right extraction house that has those minor cannabinoids, I would definitely step up. Just because you have, especially if you're talking about white label, okay? If you're selling exactly what everybody else is selling, it's gonna be hard for you to differentiate yourself. So in my opinion is that you need to step up and go to a premium brand, especially considering the fact that I do believe that in the next 12 months, well, nobody has a crystal ball, but next 12 months, we're gonna get some clarity on what's gonna happen for the ingestibles. I was just in another side of Florida last week and talking to big mass retailers. And a lot of them are scared. Some of them are stepping up to the plate and just getting started with ingestibles, but most of them are just waiting. But they've been waiting for a while, and they really want to get in the ingestibles side. So I'm sure they're putting money on K Street to really push for some type of regulation clarity. So when that happens, especially if you're just a startup right now, how are you going to differentiate yourself when Costco and Amazon and all these other guys are coming in? Because Bezos says that your margins is my opportunity, and he's going to sell it at a price that is rock bottom. So I don't want you just to start out a brand and it's just, you know, dissipates because the pricing structure is gone. So how do you protect yourself with moats, with defensive positions? Is that you have a product that's really, really different. So the gaps in the market, if you just go to GNC, or you can go to Amazon, you can go to Vitacost, you can go to some of these other sites, and just look at their most popular segments. Does that make sense? Like men's health or sleep, or they just have huge categories. And find out what category, in my opinion, resonates for you, right? Start using some of the products. The last thing you want to be is, I'm just in it for money. It hadn't worked for me. It hadn't worked for any of my family. That's going to be hard for you to build a story, even if you have a good farm. Does that make sense? Because people are going to come to you and say, well, how do you know this thing really works? All right? And if you don't have a PhD and you can talk, wax eloquently like this guy, how are you going to differentiate yourself? You're going to differentiate yourself some stories. And then, as he said, on your packaging, you just can't make that many claims. Okay, I haven't gone down and looked at some of the brands downstairs to look at them in detail, but what I heard from the last panel, some people are saying that they got diseases on the label. Please don't do that. Okay, please don't do that, right? So if you can't make claims, you're going, what? How the hell am I going to even sell this thing, George? You're going to have a story. You're going to have a story that resonates. You're going to have a story that's different.
Yeah, I have 3 comments. At first, if you're going to be making a new product, you need competitive intelligence, you need to do market research, and you need to get the similar products from Walmart or wherever, maybe several of them. Look at the ingredients, look at the labeling, look at the claims, and see what exactly do you want to duplicate and what do you want to differentiate. And several years ago, I was contacted by this guy in California who had some kind of healthy coffee with some kind of special process, and he said, our coffee is sold at the Vatican, it's approved by the Vatican, and he said, FDA approved our process. I said, well, FDA doesn't really approve any process, they allow products to be marketed. And he was sending me information, and he was saying, and there was one publication he sent me that says coffee can be used to treat Alzheimer's, depression, diabetes, epilepsy. There was like 50 things, and he's like, I want to put that. I mean, he was getting me to write marketing stuff to put similar things on his products, and I said, well, we need to be careful about that because those are diseases and they're treated with drugs, and you're going to get, FDA is going to look at your website, and you're going to have some issues with that. You can't act like you're a pharmacy with coffee. Even with that publication. But Anyway, that was interesting consulting experience. And the other thing is, I was talking to an exhibitor here, and he was selling gummies, and he was telling me that they're concerned in the next 3 months that LA is considering doing some tighter regulation of gummies because they look like candy for kids, and they want to differentiate those kind of products from other products that are not necessarily, that kids would not necessarily reach for. And he said, oh yes, we put a child container closure on the top of our bottles, but yeah, he said there's some regulations coming, and the state is concerned about products like that, especially with all the vaping with the kids and with the targeting with the flavors.
Kind of going off his gummies comment and what I said earlier on the panel, be proactive, think ahead. Don't come out with CBD gummies that look like Lego men or stars or dolphins, like I've seen it. Don't do it. You're wasting your time because
Hearts.
Care Bears. A square, it's fine. The consumer doesn't care if it looks like Batman or if it looks like a circle. They don't. They're eating it, and they're eating it for a reason. And you're selling it to them for that reason, not because of what it looks like. So from marketing, if you need to make it a Lego man for marketing, then you're doing it wrong from the jump. Be proactive and don't go that route, because you're gonna have to start all over again. Because I promise you, like it is in Colorado, they're very, very strict on the THC gummies, and they're all stamped that says THC with a weed leaf on the gummy itself. So it's coming. It will come. So if you're doing it now, God bless. And I don't recommend it. That's all.
Yeah, especially like, and in California, I mean, if you're selling tablets, every tablet has to be stamped with that THC label that the state has. And sometimes the state has the THC with the M underneath for medical. So there's the consumer market and there's the medical cannabis market. And some dispensaries have the medical segregated. Unless you have a card, you cannot go over there. So for the label, every piece has to be labeled, and then on the box, it'll say, for chocolate, it'll have 10 pieces, 10 milligram per piece, total amount of THC in the chocolate is 100 milligram. So the government says you have to label each piece and the total amount of the THC in the product.
Those are good points. So I want to see in the last few minutes if we can tease out something extremely useful and then get a couple questions going. And to your comment on making it taste good for kids, I had that happen. I publish articles on Forbes and in this industry, and I get samples and stuff sometimes. And I had one sitting in my cupboard, and I was with my son, who's 9, 10 now, and we were gonna watch a movie, and I popped one in my mouth, and it was CBD, and I was like, God, that tastes delicious. And he saw me take another one right immediately after, and he wanted one, and I was like, well, it's CBD. I mean, it's a very large. The brand that's launching that this is from is extremely financed. So I was like, I looked at the lab reports already. I was like, this isn't gonna hurt him. So I gave him one, and he wanted one immediately. We ate the whole jar. So the whole jar while we watched him.
CBD, not THC.
Well, exactly. Oh my God.
You'd be on the floor.
Right, cataton.
Actually, when I came back from San Diego, I was so tired because I came in at like 7 o'clock in the morning, and I got some CBD cookies. And I left them on the counter, and I hadn't eaten, but coming back, but I left them on the counter after I opened up my luggage, and my son, and I went upstairs to go to bed, and my son took them, and he said he told me he had 4, and he said, I don't feel very good. I said, I didn't, I said, okay, don't ever do that again, and especially don't take it if it has THC, because, you might be in the hospital, but, I mean, it's like, now he knows not to, and sometimes I've had bad reaction, like I've been on the floor for a few hours because I had 15 milligram of THC, and I took a tablet, and I'm like, well, I don't really feel anything. And then I took another piece of chocolate and the gummy, and then it was 15 milligram. And then after about an hour, my eyes started feeling like, weird, and I started hallucinating. And then I was on the floor. I was so, obviously the THC causes low blood pressure and dizziness and nausea. So, I mean, it has the psychedelic effect. And I've had another time where I had more of the psychedelic and a lot less of a dizziness. But the first time was all dizziness, and it was really bad.
Yeah, that's it. Okay, so George, I liked what you said, and So if we were to go to, like, let's say there's a good strategy to get your white label kicked off right, and you mentioned you can use Amazon to see what people actually search. So a large percentage of the general marketplace uses Amazon to shop. So you can get a sample size of what the market is interested in by going and looking. So granted, Amazon, if you didn't know, doesn't sell CBD. It's actually only hemp products. They can't, because the FDA. So those aren't really, some CBD brands are really putting them on there, but they can't really say it, and you're not really getting that. So, but you can see what people are looking at.
Has one now that says CBD oil on it, but that was after a while that.
On Amazon?
No, CVS.
Oh, gotcha, CVS, yeah. So
Yeah, on
what I was
Amazon, you can't have it. Yeah.
Amazon won't.
Right, yeah.
No, yeah, right. You can't do this on Amazon, which is a really good opportunity to get people to build your site right now. When they do take it, when the brands that you're white labeling from are going to be on there, so you're going to have to really already be established, and this is a really good time to do that. And the way to differentiate is there's got to be a strategy there, and I know of one, and I think that you touched on it. And I think your company might have already done it, and you have plenty of products. Maybe you can get them a really good way of going through those and saying, this is what people are really looking for, and here's a part where there's not a whole lot of competition.
I mean, so I think he mentioned something, coffee. So I do a lot of functional coffee, do a lot of stick packs. So I got, that business is picking up where people are putting in water miscible CBD.
I like stick packs.
People want energy, okay? So there are a lot of nootropic iterations. I think that's like an evergreen type deal that you can combine with CBD. That's like a limitless type deal. So those are the things you need to look at. I mean, if you don't take any freaking nutrition right now and you want to get into CBD, go take some nutritional products and figure out what's going to work for you, or what works for your mom, or what works for your sister, or what works for your wife. Does that make sense? That's not CBD to start with. And then add CBD into it too. But you're gonna have to have a story. You gotta be passionate about the product because the customer's looking for transparency, but also the customer's looking for connection, right? Connection. Because there's so many products go out there, how are the millennials gonna connect with you? Is that because they know you care and they know you're transparent, but they wanna see the full package?
Yeah, and maybe people might not know what nootropic is because there was a time when I didn't, but that's for brain health, improving cognitive function, and there's different nutraceuticals that are touted, and vitamins and minerals for that purpose.
All right, let's take a couple minutes for some questions. Anybody got a question? Go ahead.
On topic, but you mentioned you had with your son. Do you know about any age restrictions, or is there anything out there about how young is too young?
You can always have a nibble. I mean, if they wanted it, just like liquor. I mean, some people have had liquor since they're age 13, so you can tell, give it to kids and say, okay, we don't want you to going in my stuff, so because you want to know what it tastes like, try it. And also, my son hates liquor, so he's tried beer, he's tried whiskey, and he's like, tastes gross, tastes like gasoline. So yeah, so.
But real quick on the compliance side, you have to be over 18 to even look at a website that sells CBD. So stay there. And then
Or 21 in some states, I think.
Yeah, 21.
Right, 21, right, in some states. So let's actually touch on compliance. I think that question is a compliance question. If you're going to put a white label together, you have to keep your marketing compliant. Anybody know what that looks like?
Well, on the age side, I will say that, again, I'm talking to some gasoline type locations. They got 5,000 gas stations or something, and a lot of them are saying they're going to card people and they're going to do 21 to even buy any CBD, right? And it's really simple. I mean, it's not simple, okay? There are plenty of lawyers you can connect with over here, and if you go to what the lawyer tells you, you're going to have pretty much a totally sterilized site. But you just have to be careful of what you put on the label. You have to be careful of what you say on the videos. In addition, you got to be careful of, like Charlotte's Web. I know they got a warning letter maybe 2 years ago of people putting in testimonials, and they approved it or they checked it and things of that nature. There's just a whole litany of things you have to try to be careful of. And so in my opinion is that you try to build a product that is premium. You make sure that the product it has some function. In my opinion, you try to make sure that your products include the hottest thing in nutrition right now, which is cannabinoid. but you add in some other functionality that's like a Ford 150, Ford 250. It's not a sexy pickup truck, but it doesn't matter if it's raining or a hurricane or a blizzard or whatever, it's gonna take your load from point A to point B. So if you maximize those Ford 150, Ford 250 pickup trucks and those functions, then you go to a specific segment of health that people are interested in, you're gonna maximize the happiness of the end consumer, and that's what you're looking for long-term anyways. And as we get clarity, and then the big guys come in for retail, and they only want to deal with single ingredients with CBD. Then you have something that's very, very different that they're going to go, hey, that's niche-y, I'm going to stay out of it, and you're doing very, very well with that. And then you can start climbing on that and building the tribe out and adding different types of products.
Back to the gentleman in the back's question real quick, though. If you do give it to your child, that's, I mean, obviously your call. Just be careful, though. CBD does and will and can amplify some medications. So if your child is sick and taking meds, just be mindful because it can really spike that up, and the meds that they're on can actually harm the child, and you definitely do not want that. So just be wary, even adults, but a child's body is obviously much more delicate. So even to all you out there, if you are taking CBD on the regular or are interested in taking it, and you are on hard like medications like Xanax, things like that, like just be careful when taking CBD, ease into it.
All right, so to kind of articulate a little bit, what I gather here is, and what I've seen working here is, don't make a health claim. You can call the title of the product Calm, but you cannot make a health claim. And if you do say something that it has done for an actual customer or for the manufacturer's customer that you've seen, you can use the testimonial, and that can make the claim, but that person's making the claim. And even if that person goes or anybody says it about your brand on a social media, don't even like it, and don't comment on it, don't thank them for it, don't interact with it. Let them say it, let people see it, that's fine. You can use it, and you can show it, but don't be the one doing anything, don't engage with it. So don't make claims. That's the way to stay, I think, stay outside of being the person at fault.
Well, yeah, because FDA does check the websites, and even I've seen warning letters where they see that if people write testimonials and write their comments that they seem to be confused, if they think that their product is behaving like a drug, they'll contact you because they don't want, they don't, again, the distinction between drugs and herbals or botanicals or food products needs to be clear with the consumers as well.
All right, that's good. We're out of time for today. Thank you for coming. I'm Jason Trofe from Cannabis 10X. We'll see you next time.